Rick Hoyt was born in 1962 with cerebral palsy due to a complication during delivery that left his brain without oxygen for several minutes. Doctors told his parents, Dick and Judy, that Rick would never be able to walk or talk and said to place him in a specialized facility. But his parents refused. They noticed something special about him, a spark of understanding. When Rick was 11 years old, he was fitted with a special computer that allowed him to communicate by typing with slight movements of his head. One day, Rick expressed his desire to participate in a 5-kilometer charity run. But since Rick couldn't run, his father Dick decided to push him in a wheelchair for the entire race. That would mark the beginning of Team Hoyt, the father-son team. Together, they completed more than 1,000 competitions, including marathons, triathlons, and even the famous Hawaii Ironman, one of the most physically demanding events in the world. Dick swam dragging a boat with Rick in it, pedaled with Rick on an adapted bicycle, and ran pushing his wheelchair. When Rick was asked what it felt like to compete, he wrote, "When my dad races with me, I feel like I have no disability." Dick's love for his son, Rick, is a reflection of how God, in his passionate and compassionate love, does whatever it takes to save us. Sabbath School Like presents the series, God's Love and His Justice. Lesson 4, God is passionate and compassionate. Passion and compassion are two words that are similar but have different meanings. Passion is when you feel such an intense love for something or someone that you enjoy devoting your time and energy to it. And compassion is when your heart is moved by someone else's suffering and you do something to alleviate it. What things can produce passion in us?
Sports, music, reading.
And what things can produce compassion in us?
Seeing a hurt puppy or someone who needs help.
And do you think you can feel passion and compassion for the same person?
Yes, like a mom or dad with their child.
Well, the Bible describes God as a passionate and compassionate God with us, and understanding that changes our life forever. So, this week's question is, how does the Bible portray God's passionate and compassionate love? Firstly, by using metaphors. Have you ever tried to explain something very complicated through a simple example?
Yes, like when you explain that the internet is like a giant spider web.
Or when you say that the heart is like a pump that pushes blood.
Exactly. Metaphors are like bridges. They help us cross from something we understand to something more complicated that we want to understand. Well, in the Bible, God uses many metaphors to show us His passionate and compassionate love because His love is so great that it is difficult for us to understand it. In Isaiah 49:15, for example, God compares Himself to a mother.
Can a mother forget the child of her bosom and have no compassion on the son of her womb? Though she forgets him, yet will I not forget thee.
Did you notice? It is not that God is a literal mother, but He uses that metaphor to tell us that His love is more faithful, more constant, and more tender than that of the most loving mother in the world. Another striking metaphor is in Hosea 11, where God says that Israel is like a little child whom He taught to walk, took in His arms, and nourished, even though Israel did not recognize His love. Don't you think these are powerful metaphors that show God's passionate and compassionate love? But listen up, this is not just an Old Testament thing. When Jesus came into this world, He told several parables that describe God's passion and compassion. The master who forgave his servant's unpayable debt of 10,000 talents reflects the compassion of the Father. The Good Samaritan also reflects the compassion of the Father. And the parable of the prodigal son reflects passion and compassion. But Jesus also used metaphors.
How often I wanted to gather your children together, as a hen gathers her chicks under her wings, and you were unwilling.
These are not mere literary figures. They teach us profound realities that God's love is greater than any love we can imagine. Secondly, by using visceral language. Have you ever heard a description so detailed you can almost feel it?
Yes, Like when someone describes a food so spicy that you feel like fire is coming out of your mouth.
Or when someone describes a headache like a hammer is hitting your head.
That's right. That's the power of visceral language. It's so intense and descriptive that you feel it deep inside. In Jeremiah 31:20, for example, God says,
Is not Ephraim my beloved son? Is he not my favorite child? Whenever I rebuke him, I remember him again. For him my heart is moved. For him I have great compassion.
Listen up. The phrase "my heart is moved" in Jeremiah 31:20 in Hebrew literally means "my bowels are turned." Mere visceral language. It is a way of expressing how God feels deep compassion. Like a mother for the child she has given birth. Another example is Isaiah 53, where Jesus is spoken of as the suffering servant. Notice the visceral language. He is despised and rejected among men, a man of sorrows, a man of pains, acquainted with grief. He has borne our griefs and carried our sorrows. Yet we esteem him stricken, smitten by God, and afflicted. But he was wounded for our transgressions. He was bruised for our iniquities. The chastisement of our peace was upon him, and with his stripes we are healed. Did you notice? These are not elegant or soft words. They are words that lead us to feel the suffering of Christ and the compassion of God for a lost world. In fact, the Greek verb splagchnizomai, which is used in the Gospels to describe Jesus' compassion for people, literally refers to the internal parts of the body, especially the viscera or entrails. The Bible does not use this language to exaggerate, but to make us understand how real and intense God's love is. It is a love that doesn't remain in pretty words, but is deeply felt and transforms us completely. And by showing Jesus, do you remember a time when Jesus displayed passion and compassion to people?
Yes, when he healed the paralytic man from Bethesda.
Or when he raised Jairus' daughter from the dead.
Exactly. When Jesus lived among us, he not only spoke of God's love, he also demonstrated it. He healed the sick, fed the hungry, and comforted the hurt. Jesus' every action reflected God's passionate and compassionate love. Matthew narrates that when Jesus saw the crowds, he had compassion on them, for they were helpless and scattered like sheep without a shepherd. But beyond his miracles, Jesus showed us the ultimate expression of that love on the cross. There he bore our sins and suffered in our place. Philippians 2:7-8 says it clearly. Jesus emptied himself, taking the form of a servant, being made in the likeness of men, and humbled himself and became obedient to the point of death, even death on a cross. Did you notice? This is the passionate and compassionate love of God made visible. It is not a love that stands still. It is a love that acts, that seeks, that rescues. Dick and Rick Hoyt showed us that passionate and compassionate love gives up on nothing. In the same way, God, in his infinite love, uses metaphors to explain his tenderness, visceral language, to show us the depth of his compassion, and gives us Jesus as the greatest example of his passion to save us. How about us? How can we reflect that love in our daily lives? Perhaps like Dick, by pushing the chair of someone in need of support, or like Jesus, by stopping to heal the heart of someone who is hurt. Today I want you to ask yourself, what can I do to show God's passionate and compassionate love to others? Remember what the Lord tells us in 1 John 4:19. We love him because he first loved us. Has this study blessed you? You too can be part of this mission to teach the Bible in a creative and transforming way. Scan the QR code you see on the screen and support us so that more people can discover God's love and justice. Remember that together we can grow more.